Welcome back to Amazing Spider-Man, and today we're going to be discussing the aftermath of him losing everything. Parker Industries falling apart in his battle with Dr. Octopus, and Secret Empire pretty much ruining Peter Parker. What is Peter Parker going to do now that he's broke? Well, that's today's episode. In our last video, we watched the fall of Parker Industries at the hands of Otto Octavius as he tried to take back the company that was once his. Rather than just hand everything over, Peter stopped Otto the only way that he knew how, by destroying Parker Industries from the inside out. Now with nothing to his name, Peter tries to go back to living a normal life, except that everyone in the world now hates Peter Parker. As Bobby, aka Mockingbird, walks out of her bedroom in her apartment getting ready for work, she asks if there's somewhere else that he could sleep. They've only been on one date. Peter lifts his hand, telling her no, because no one else knows that I'm Spider-Man. Where would I put all my Spidey stuff? Bobby tells him, yeah, about that, it's kind of everywhere. And I stomped on one of those spider tracers thinking it was an actual spider. Hope that wasn't expensive. In any case, pick up your crap and do the laundry. I'm not your aunt and that isn't going to work. As Bobby leaves, Peter sits back thinking that this is it. This is his life now. Ex-billionaire CEO. He flips through the channels on TV and he can't find a station that isn't reporting on him and his gigantic failures. So he turns off the TV, grabbing the paper, and he sees that Bobby already clipped out an article about him to avoid hurting his feelings. As he gets up to get something from the fridge, he sees the clipping posted to the fridge door. And it reads, Peter Parker, threat or menace. So maybe she wasn't trying to avoid his feelings. Meanwhile, over on the Upper East Side, Harry Osborn deals with the fallout of Parker Industries, trying to salvage what little he can, as he was the vice president of this company. He tries to call Peter, but he's unsuccessful, and his son Stanley grabs a hold of some of the Parker Industries documentation and begins drooling on them. Harry calls for Liz, asking for a little help, but she tells him that if it's regarding a bid on the Baxter building, then yes. As the head of Alchemex, she will gladly take that from them. Harry then calls in for the nanny, and she comes in taking the kids, telling Normie that they should let mommy and daddy have some time alone. How about they get a snack? As the doors close, Harry and Liz begin to kiss, and Liz just begins to think about it. If he hadn't raced home before all of New York was sealed in that energy bubble, then they wouldn't have been trapped together with nothing to do, only having time to themselves. Harry pulls back and he says that this is not how he pictured them getting back together, but them being a family again for the boys is important, so they really should work this out. Over in Midtown, the workers of the Daily Bugle are interrupted when they hear someone shouting, Peter Parker, threat or menace? Are you guys serious? Everyone looks over to see Peter Parker looking rather unkempt, and Joe walks up stating that maybe they should put a pin in that. But would he mind explaining why he thinks that he can just come into his office and speak like that? Peter holds out the paper and says, I thought we were friends. How could you have written all that junk about me? Did you forget to mention that I saved lives doing this? He opens up the paper, going on stating, I helped stop the spread of the carrion virus. I freed the oppressed people of Symkaria, and I sacrificed all that I had to stop Doc Ock. You pay me like I'm a... And Joe tells him, someone who was in way over his head and not ready to take the reins of a global tech company? You're a man who let millions of employees and consumers around the world down. Working men and women like your Aunt May and Uncle Ben. I wrote those things because they were true. Peter scratches his head, telling him, actually, you're right. I'm gonna get out of your way. He then stops looking at the monitor, telling the science editor Colin that the article is completely wrong. The new PIM microprocessors don't have more memory because they are compressing matter. They're not shrinking computers. It's more like shrinking massive external hard drives. Colin says, really? And Peter tells him, yeah, it's some really cool stuff, but it's very expensive. No way it'll be available to the public. You're gonna have to change that last line. Before Peter leaves, Betty runs up to stop Peter and says, I know you've had a rough day, but you know what you need? A party. So it happens to be Flash Thompson's birthday. After getting the party information from Betty, Peter heads out into the streets of New York, and after one man recognizes him, suddenly everyone recognizes the failure that is Peter Parker. They swarm around him asking what he's going to do to make this right to the people who lost their jobs, and he runs off into an alleyway. He jumps up onto a building to hide, thinking, all right, it's official. Everyone hates me. Well, maybe not everyone. Later that night, Peter heads over to Flash's birthday party and everyone begins talking about how things are different. And then they turn back to the topic of Peter. Everyone begins talking about how depressed Peter has gotten lately, but no one has a solution to offer. He's an adult, right? He should be able to figure this out on his own. But as they all go on, Peter quietly listens from the shadows. He's an adult, right? He can figure this out on his own? And later, once Bobby gets home, she opens the door to see Peter on the couch, still. And then Peter is suddenly hit with a uniform. He looks at the costume and says that this isn't laundry. And Bobby tells him, yeah, now get dressed, we're going out. After a night of saving trucks from Johnny Horton, also known as Griffin, the two heroes go back home and Bobby says that it was a fun night out. She then goes to the fridge, handing Peter one of her soda cans, stating that he earned this, and this is a good look for him. The two kiss and Peter thinks actually, she's right. Not a good look for Peter Parker, but you know what? forget that guy, because whenever he wants, he can be the Amazing Spider-Man. The next day at the Baxter building, Johnny Storm flies down telling Harry, "Nuh-uh, not a snowball's chance in hell Peter would sell the Baxter building." Harry says that he's Peter's friend too, and he can honestly state that Peter didn't have much choice in this. He's supposed to be here any minute. Up above, Peter swings by seeing Harry and Johnny arguing over the sale of the building, and he jumps down and Johnny shouts, "Tell him, Spidey, this place isn't for sale." Peter tells him, actually, even though Peter may not fully have appreciated the complexity of the situation yet. And from what Peter said, selling the building was the only way that they could make back the money for the lawsuits. Johnny begins to glow as his body begins to slowly ignite, and he begins to shout, "Flame on!" And he throws a fireball right at Peter Parker. He then flies around trying to burn Peter, shouting, "This place was supposed to be held onto until the Fantastic Four could return." The two of them begin to fight, and Harry runs in shouting, "You guys can't do this here! It'll void the sale!" Johnny throws another fireball, hitting the Fantastic Four statue, knocking his own statue's head off. And Peter then says that this is normally where I make a joke. Johnny lands and begins walking to Peter, telling him, "I'm going to." And Harry runs between them, stating, "Will you both just shut up for a second? Your fight literally created a smoke screen for us to be robbed. Look, it's Clash, and he's in the R&D lab looting." Up several floors, Clash is looking at a sonic transducer and says that there's no way that he'd let Peter Parker sell off his inventions. Time for them to pack it up. A voice tells him, "I am very disappointed in you." And hi, after all the promises you made about going straight, Clash looks up to see Peter and Johnny and hits them both with a frequency blast, shouting, "I just want what's mine." Behind them, two of Clash's men begin pushing down a device, and one of them says that maybe they shouldn't take something that they don't really understand what it does. Suddenly, the device begins to glow, and the other man says, "I'm not sure it's supposed to do that." As everyone begins to look back, the device begins to vibrate, and Johnny asks, "What exactly does that thing do?" Peter tells him that it's a self-recharging power source. It's stuck in an upward cycle. If we don't stop it, it's gonna take out the entire block. Clash shouts, "Wait, I could stop all of this with my null frequencies." And as he hits it, it doesn't do anything. Peter tells him, "Wait, we need to create a harmonic frequency, not a null. Look, we can take care of this, but we all need to work together." The three of them gather around, and Peter directs Johnny on where to weld, while having Clash create the frequencies to reduce the device's vibration. As the three of them step back, Peter says, "Now it'll either blow up our faces or..." And Johnny shouts that they need to stop the robbers. Peter webs up the robbers, telling them that they're not going anywhere. And as Peter looks back at Clash, he sighs, stating, "He must have masked his footsteps and got away." Johnny asks Peter if they should go after him, and Peter tells him, "Nah, who knows where he went, and he did help us stop this thing." Harry runs up yelling, "Are you freaking kidding? He took stolen Parker Industries tech. Of course you have to chase him." Peter strings up the robbers and tells him Clash only took what was his, so I don't mind that. And Harry stops and telling him, "No, you don't mind, but Peter does care, and I'm the only one getting an ulcer over all of this. So you know what? That's it, I'm quitting right here and now." Peter tells him to wait, but Harry storms out, and Johnny stops him, telling him, "I'm still mad about the building, but you could really use a friend right now." A short while later, Peter is sitting on top of the Baxter building with Johnny, telling him that he was pushing science forward. He was helping people all over the world, and of course he would find a way to blow it all up. As Johnny tries to comfort him, Peter's phone rings and he answers it, stating that this is Peter Parker. "How have I ruined your life?" Joe Robertson tells him that he knows who this is, and this is his new life calling. Would he like to work at the Daily Bugle, but not taking photos? This is about science. The next night at Bobby's apartment, she asks Peter if he's sure that he doesn't want to just, sleep in a bed tonight. And Peter tells her no, he's got to focus on this. It's going to be a new day, a new job, the perfect job. The next morning at the Daily Bugle, Joe holds a staff meeting about their newest employee, but he hasn't arrived yet. Carlin laughs, stating that an editor needs to be punctual. Security already said no one's checked in, so that means he's going to be late. Just then, Peter walks into the side door after changing, and he asks, "What's the haps? The skinny, the DL." Joe pulls him aside, telling him that next time he should probably come in the front lobby like a normal person. But either way, they should go over his responsibilities as the new science editor of the Daily Bugle. He's gonna need a Sunday supplement that will be ready for press every Saturday night. It may sound like a big task, but he'll have a full team to manage. Another thing to note is that the hours are flexible. So long as the work gets done, he can work from home. Joe holds out a phone, and Peter looks at his new work phone, and he sees the logo and says, "Alchemex droid? Really? I created webware." Suddenly there's a flash, and the woman holding a camera says, "Peter Parker's using an A-droid. Priceless." This is so a lock screen. Joe says that this is Ruby. She's the best tech reporter around. "Ruby, this is your new boss." Ruby says whatever, she isn't deleting this. Meanwhile, over in upstate New York, Xander Zinn walks Bobby through the Humanitech Robotics Incorporated facility, stating how Humanitech is lucky to have her and her security system expertise. Bobby tells him, well, to be fair, he is paying top dollar for it. And her phone begins to ring as she answers it, telling Peter that yes, she's having a good day, but more importantly, how is his day? Peter sits back at his desk, telling her it's sort of good. People are somewhat tolerating him. And for his first assignment, he needs a big sexy science story for her, but he stops himself, stating, Wait, you're working at Humanitech, the robotics laboratory with revolutionary AI? Since when? Oh, okay. Maybe I have been a little too caught up in myself to ask where you're working. After a few more minutes, Peter jumps up from his desk, shouting to his team, telling them all to grab their bags. They're going on a field trip. A little while later at Humanitech, Xander gives the tour to Peter and his team, and Xander explains how they're working to change the world. Just think an android in every home. Xander whispers to Peter that he's sorry. He doesn't mean to rub in their success. Peter tells him it's fine. He's been getting over it. This is his moving on phase. As everyone passes by the playroom for the androids, Peter looks up at the computer screen and notices something strange about the AI's programming code. Those patterns almost look like brain waves. Xander tells him that he has a good eye. They're modeled after human-level thinking. While the processing is affordable, sadly, the chips require hard-to-get materials. Peter tells him that affordable doesn't really normally mix with hard-to-get materials, but okay. Meanwhile, Colin, a science editor, begins prying open one of the androids, stating that maybe they should take a look inside to see what's going on. Xander shouts for him to stop. They all signed waivers. He's ordering him to stop now. And the android's eyes turn red, and it begins to shout, "Execute, stop." Peter's spidey sense begins to go off, and he jumps over, grabbing the android. He then struggles with the android to pull it off, and as he fights with it, the android says, stop me, please, stop." Peter looks at Bobby, and Xander yells at everyone to get out. If they mention any of this, he will sue them all. Later that night, Peter and Bobby sneak back into the Humanitech facility, and Peter says, "All right, we gotta be super stealthy about this." Bobby walks in the front door, and after a few button presses on the keypad, the door opens and she says that they can just go in since she's the one who designed the security. As the two begin to look at the computer, they all stand by Humanitrons beginning to turn on, and those Humanitrons begin to swarm around them. While they begin to fight, Xander runs by asking what is going on. Why are there two Avengers in his building? You're going to ruin everything. One of the Humanitrons begins to speak, stating, execute, override, but please. Peter says, okay, and he begins to pry the panel that Colin was seen messing with earlier. As he peels it off, he sees a small object, and he says that this must be the silicone matrix. Phew! He thought it might be an actual brain. But then the Humanitron says, cape. The silicone matrix pops out, and the android begins screaming until the silicone matrix shatters on the floor. Bobby says, oh god, it was screaming, and Peter tells her no. They wanted this. He begins to rip the plates off, allowing the silicone matrix to shoot out and fall to the ground. Xander shouts, how could you do this? Everyone is going to win, and there would be one less supervillain in the world. And Bobby stops, asking, what are you talking about? The more of the silicone matrix that hits the ground, they all begin to turn to dust, and then they begin to bond together, forming a person. And a woman shouts, I am free! Peter says, whoa, that's not Sandman, who is this? And Bobby says that's Quicksand, one of Thor's baddies, and no, this isn't about him. Quicksand pulls her arms back, and Peter runs by shouting, hey, I was the one who freed you! Don't I get some wishes or something? She stops and then says, fine, I owe you that much. I won't kill Xander for now. As a massive sand tornado appears, Quicksand flies out through the roof, and Bobby says, great, now I have to get another job. Peter tells her, don't worry, I got you covered now. I'm working. And speaking of that, I should probably get to work. The next day over at Harry's apartment, he and Liz come home after looking at buildings for Alchemex to purchase, and that's when he notices the boys have band-aids on. He asks Emma the nanny what happened, and she tells them that you know how boys are, always roughhousing around the house. Harry looks at Stanley and says boys will be boys, and Emma goes on saying, of course, don't worry. She treats these darlings like her own flesh and blood, and in Emma's hands are 2 small vials of blood. Later over at the Daily Bugle, Peter's team looks over at the article, and Joe tells everyone to take a bow, science section. It's not every week that you get the top of even the front page. Joe pulls Peter aside, telling him that today was a great start for them. So what will he have for them next week? Peter says, oh, this is how it is now? And Joe says, yep. Feel up for the challenge? Peter looks around, folding his arms, stating, it feels like he's home. And there you have it, the fall of Peter Parker, setting up the next storyline for Amazing Spider-Man. It's interesting. I like to see that he's going back to his roots. I don't know about you. I did enjoy the Parker Industries storyline, but I did feel like to an extent Dan Slott was kind of turning him into Iron Man, which is interesting because now Dan Slott's going to go write Iron Man, so I think Marvel had the same thought. Yeah. So anyway, now he's going back to the original Spider-Man. It's going to be looking interesting. I'm enjoying that. And if you're wondering why I look the exact same that I've looked in all of the intros and outros for the last week, well, I was at Emerald City Comic Con. Hopefully I saw you. It was probably a lot of fun. I'm like in the future now. This is future Benny talking to you, but from the past, I'm a time traveler. I'll see you next time right here.